Good evening. Oke Tansei. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is our first series of 3 this evening, and thank you so much for taking time out to join us today. Before we get started, we're going to do our opening with an opening prayer and a smudge. And so I'm going to turn it over to our elder to talk about smudge as we get going. And so, Elder Carrie, would you please bring us into with smudge?
Thank you very much. I like to tell this Cree Métis story about smudge so that you would understand why we smudge. It is for connection. It is to begin everything we do. But there is a story to this, and this story was told to me by my grandmother, and where she was coming from, it is told in 2 ways, with a Christian sort of side to it and a very traditional side to it. And so I'm going to tell the story exactly the way my grandmother would tell the story. I won't change it at all because she was the person that lived in 2 worlds really, really well. So let me explain to you the story of smudge. And perhaps as I'm talking about this, I will get Jessica, my Escapios, to help me here start to light it while I tell the story. So long ago, Creator created the universe, the stars and the moon and the sun and the water and the earth, the animals, the plants, even those spaces in between the stars, the sun, all of those things in the universe, Creator created. And he gave all of those things in the universe spirit. And he gave all of those things in the universe gifts. And each gift was just as special as the next. And he gave all of those things in the universe values, the values of love and kindness and respect and compassion and honesty and accountability and responsibility. And those are the 7 Cree grandmother teachings. And of course, there are many, many other values that you are taught, that you carry, and all human beings carry all of the values deep within their spirit. All things in the universe carry their values in their spirit as well. And our spirit is deep within our belly buttons, where we're attached to our grandmothers. And that's because, and my grandmother's story is, Creator wants us to think in our belly buttons, not in our heads. And so whenever we are smudging, we are called together with the beautiful gifts of all those plants, those animals, everything in the universe. And one of those plants is the tobacco plant. And at the beginning, before we began, I was presented with tobacco in the way I was taught as well. It was opened and given to me by Jessica, and I accepted it. That shows respect for me. And so I offer my respect back to you. So one of the gifts that the tobacco plant carries is respect. And the little tobacco plant said to all those plants and the animals in that circle, I will give myself to the 2-leggeds so they can pray with me. And when they pray with me, then I will understand what they are asking, and I can give it to them. And whenever when they pick medicines, whenever they have gatherings, when they use that tobacco, then everyone around them will see that as respect, and they will offer reciprocity back. So all the things in the universe, Creator placed in a circle so they could look at each other. Because when you look at each other, you are accountable and responsible to each other. And so then Creator brought the 2-leggeds. And the 2-leggeds, he gave all of the values in the universe deep within their bellies. And Creator said to the universe, you are here to care for this species. This is the human species. All things in the universe, all species in the universe, never forget who they are. They know exactly who they are. The only species on earth that forgets who they are human beings. And so Creator provided this amazing world for us to live in, where all things in the universe have gifts to share with one another, to connect with one another, and to connect with the human beings. And if you see this beautiful smudge coming up in front of me here, this is sage that we use. And in this territory, we use sage and sweetgrass, tobacco, and cedar mostly. Every territory, depending on where you come, uses their own medicines. But all territories in the entire world have their own medicines that they use to create a beginning, that connection to spirit. So I'm truly grateful that we have this beautiful sage. I can smell it. I wish you could. And we're taking that breath because we want to come down into our belly buttons. Because that's where we carry our values. And we want everybody to take that breath. So even if you're watching, reach out into this beautiful smudge and bring it to you. And take that breath. You've had a busy day. You're up in your heads trying to think, what do I have to do? How long is this going? Take that breath. Come down into your spirit, where you are connected to the values that we all carry. And so when we smudge, we automatically take that breath. That's what we do. And then we take our hand and we put it over our body because we want to remove all of those things that are not of value to us right now. We want to come down into our spirit so that we are the values we carry. Human beings are values. That's who we are. We have the greatest gift of all because we carry all of the values. When we don't carry those values and we show behaviors, we are not in spirit. So I'm sending these blessings to you. Let us pray. And if you don't pray, that's okay. Just think of something good today that you want to share with the universe and yourselves, because we are all unique. But find that place in your spirit, which is hope, purpose, and peace, because those are the three things that your spirit carries. That's how you know who you are, when you're in your spirit. And I will pray for all of us. Creator, giver of all life, grandmothers and grandfathers of all four directions, Mother Earth. My name is Carrie Moore. I'm truly grateful for this day, Creator. We ask that you watch over all of us as human beings and all of Mother Earth. We ask that we could be kinder and gentler today. We ask, Creator, that our challenges be gentle. We ask that you surround us with safety. No matter where we are, no matter what we are doing, may we always be safe. We ask, Creator, that you watch over all of the agencies we work in, all of the places that we live in. We ask that you watch over us so that we can share our values and let go of our behaviors. We ask that you watch over our families and our children. May they be surrounded by love and kindness today as well. And we ask that you watch over those who may be sick, not just physically sick, but maybe sick in many different ways, that they will feel stronger today, that they will have love in their lives today, that they will have the resources that they need today, and they will feel better today. And we thank COVID. We know that COVID came here and caused many issues, but in many ways it helped us to reflect on who we are. And we ask that COVID doesn't hurt us anymore, so that we can embrace each other again, so that we can walk in a good way, and that we can let go of those things that are of no value to us and be kinder and gentler people and make this world a kinder and gentler place. We're truly grateful, Creator, for our lives and for the work that you have given us. Miigwech. Hi, hi. Hi. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Just walk into the center for the camera and smudge everyone.
Thank you so much, Elder Carrie. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us this evening. Tonight, we're here to talk about residential schools and the impacts of intergenerational trauma. And before we get started on that, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. For those that may have seen earlier today, Boys and Girls Clubs of Calgary and Aspen Family Community Services, we've merged as one organization. We are now known as Trellis. And so on behalf of Trellis, we'd like to acknowledge the ancestral and traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which include the Siksika, the North and South Piikani, and the Kainai nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina and the Iahe Nakota, which include the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. We are Mohkinstsis, which is also home to the Métis Nation of Region 3, and all those who call Calgary home. So on behalf of Trellis, thank you for joining us this evening. For those that I have not met yet, my name is Christy Morgan. Oke Wetikup. I come from the Secwepemc Nation in British Columbia. For those in English, the Shuswap Nation in British Columbia. And I have the honor and privilege of working with many great colleagues at Trellis now as the Director for Indigenous Initiatives. Today here in our circle, we have a number of our Trellis colleagues joining us. Helping me this evening to help host Circle is my colleague Jessica Smith, and I'll turn it over to Jessica to introduce herself.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Smith. My spirit name is Singing Buffalo Woman, which was recently gifted to me by two elders near and dear to my heart, Daryl and Linda Brass. I hail from Halifax, Nova Scotia, born and raised. My family, my father's side comes from Hiawatha First Nation. My mother's side comes from New Brunswick. I too work for our newfound old agency of Trellis, formerly BGCC in Aspen. And yeah, I'm really excited and honored to share this circle with some beautiful souls that we have tonight, and take time to really listen to the history that really brought us where we are today, so that we can move forward with some more understanding and some more truth-telling, and then come into some reconciliation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And again, thank you so much again for joining us this evening. Thank you for sitting in circle with us and joining us. This evening, as I mentioned, the topic is around reconciliation. This is a topic around residential schools that may be familiar to some, not familiar to others. This can often be a hard topic to talk about or bring up, but it's an important topic in our shared history. in Canada, that the importance of leading up to this being the first session over the next few days, of wanting to provide space for us to come together to, one, collectively share and understand our history. But as we go into September 30th, which is Orange Shirt Day, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone wearing their orange shirts online, it's important to understand our past and where we're going. Many of my elders that I've been very fortunate to be able to live, work, and play with here in Treaty 7, as well as at home. It's important to know our past, as hurtful as it can be. As a first generation who has not attended residential schools in my family, the importance of talking about this and understanding it is really important to keep alive. And often that question comes up. And so tonight it's about creating that space and the opportunity for learning and understanding in our shared history, because the more that we can become informed and knowledgeable about this, the more that we can create space for healing and truly working towards that word of reconciliation. On that note, we have our elder, Carrie Moore, here with us. We were to have Reg and Rose Crowshoe join us. They will be joining us tomorrow and Wednesday evening. They had a family emergency, so our hearts and our thoughts go with them and the families down at the Gunny Nation for that. And so I know I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to introduce Carrie, but I just want to also say my deepest thanks to Carrie for being here. I've known Carrie for many years, and the deep passion and love I have for this lady goes far, that she is such a gem to our community and for a younger person, not quite that young, but younger, such a rock and a pillar for me in terms of what it truly is to look at when we look at reconciliation and healing, that I really do look at her as a pillar, someone to look up to and be with. And so I'm just so very honored to have her and sit with her whenever I can, and I'm so excited to be within 6 feet of safety to her this evening. So thank you so much for being here.
So I'm honored to introduce you as well. Elder Carrie Moore has her Master's of Social Work and is a registered social worker who's Cree and Métis, originally from Saskatchewan. Carrie is in private practice and specializes in intergenerational trauma and grief. She is also a seasonal instructor with the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. Carrie is an accepted knowledge keeper and sits on several elder boards, including the Elder Advisory Circle for the University of Calgary and the Calgary Board of Education. But I also want to introduce Carrie how I know Carrie. Carrie, from the moment I moved to Calgary, was, I think, someone who supported the work that we do, created safety for me in a new city, because I am not from a big city. And I was lucky enough to sit in circle for your intergenerational trauma teachings, and I was able to start to unpack some of that stuff in my family and understand a little bit more, and connect with Carrie in so many ways. And from there, I seen how much our young people needed Carrie's support. And it doesn't matter, when we ask for your help, you are always with us to help. And I think that that's true community and that's true connection. And so we're always honored and grateful to sit in circle with you, because you just give so much love, and you're always so giving. But I think the importance is that we honor and care for the knowledge that you bring to us, and that we take that forward in a good way. So thank you again for coming and sharing circle with us tonight and talking about some really difficult topics. So hi. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you to really bless us with why we're here this evening.
Well, thank you very much. I feel very honored to be here, and very humbled by that. I have a daunting task to speak about residential school, because we're all touched by what happened in residential school, myself included. although I did not attend residential school. Many people in my family did. And my family were near the last residential school that was taken down in Duck Lake. So that's how close my reserve was. Nitanako Muksanaki is a name that was given to me by Kelly and Daphne Good Eagle, and I'm very honored by that. And Wapanmihiganagakasqueo is my Cree name, and but people just know me as Carrie Moore, and I'm just really grateful to be here. So let me take a breath with that, because I don't want to be in my head, I want to be in my spirit. Because what I'm going to talk about is difficult, and I don't intend it to be difficult. I don't intend it to be hard for you. So let me just begin in a way that might help connect all of us, rather than make us see ourselves as different, because you will probably find that there are many more similarities between all of us than differences. And so what I always like to talk about when we're talking about what happened is that what happened was colonization. And although colonization created many things to us, I'm going to talk about what it did to the children and what it did to us to help to actually take us from spirit so that we could be controlled. And this is a very difficult thing, because you're all going, well, take that breath. Because I want you to realize one thing, that all human beings in the world have been colonized. This isn't just an indigenous event that happened. Although we are not talking about all people in the world. Know that as human beings, we have all been colonized. And it's the children that are colonized. So, and many people in the world have been colonized multiple times. And every time you are colonized, a little bit more of you is taken away from spirit. And remember what I spoke about in Smudge, is that we carry our values in our spirit, which is deep within our belly button, where we're attached to our mothers. We don't carry our values up in our head. We carry them deep within our belly. That's why I said take a breath. Because when you take that breath and can actually come down into your belly button, you are in your spirit. You are in those values of love and kindness and peace and hope and compassion. So what happens in colonization is that the children are the ones that are colonized. The adults fight, right? The adults fight. And the children are taken, and children are very resilient. They just want to please people. And they have this great ability to survive. And that great ability to survive is telling them, what should I do? Where should I go? How should I get through this? And so children are taken in that colonized environment, and they are now told who they are. Who's better than them? Somebody knows more than you. Somebody is better than you. And you are no longer who you were. And who were we? Who are all of us as human beings? Human beings carry the greatest gifts of all in the world, and that is our values, the love and the kindness, the respect, the honesty, the accountability and responsibility, the courage that we carry, that understanding we have with all things, that relationship that we build with everything, the sun and the moon and the stars, the water, the earth, the medicines, the deer. We sing songs to Mother Earth. And the songs that we sing to Mother Earth actually vibrate at the same level as Mother Earth. So we live in harmony with Mother Earth because we know that we forget who we are all the time. We go back to Mother Earth. And we use those medicines. We do ceremony. We sing those songs. Everything we do mimics Mother Earth. The stars, the moon, everything around us. We mimic everything around us because everything around us is related to us. Everything around us is our family. We would know what to do by starting that smudge, coming down into our spirit, and we would use that medicine that's just for smudge. And we would put that tobacco down by other medicines to bring medicines to us that we could give in teas to people who were sick and not feeling well. We would sing songs to them. And when we sing songs, our songs vibrate different parts of our body. That's something people don't realize. When they hear us sing songs, they think, what? It's just a song. And we sing with the vowels because the vowels are the vowels coming from Mother Earth. The birds, the bears, the thunder. Everything that we do mimics Mother Earth. So people who come from the earth, the indigenous people of the earth, are the keepers of the earth, just like the earth is the keeper of us. And if we are colonized, what happens to us is we are taken away from those teachings. Because when you are in your spirit, you cannot be controlled. When you're in your head, you can be. When you're in your heart, you can be. But when you're in your head, that is when you have the behaviors. When you're in your spirit, nobody can control you. You know who you are. And that is why we are connected to Mother Earth. We are connected to Mother Earth to remind us who we are. Because we always forget. So colonization takes us from our spirit. Spirit is not a religion, by the way. A lot of people get confused by that. Spirit is one piece of a whole being. One piece of a whole species. Our spirit is deep within our belly where we carry our hope, our peace, and our purpose. Our emotions are how we heal. Our physical body is what carries all of those things for us, helps us take action to do things. Our mind is how we solve problems, but we cannot solve problems unless we're in spirit. Here's another thing that is difficult, is why we have trouble as children in school. If you're like this, you're not in spirit. Simple little thing. Come down into spirit. And what happens to us is we drop right into the prefrontal cortex where we think and solve problems. So, now that you know who we are, all of us, know that indigenous people are still very, very close to their original teachings. That's why this is so important. Because when you lose those teachings, you lose the ability to connect to spirit. And when you lose that connection to spirit, we become the behaviors. And when we become the behaviors, we will always fight. So, all of us have been colonized. All of us have gone through that in our lives. Maybe not in this generation. But when you think back to your ancestors, what happened to them? Why did we come to Canada? Because you were probably fleeing your own torments. But maybe a lot of Europeans have been colonized so many times that a lot of Europeans don't know the teachings of the earth anymore. It doesn't mean that they're not still there. But it's not something you would necessarily think about, especially if you're an accountant or you're running an organization, you're up in your head, right? The memories of our ancestors are also given to us, passed down to us generationally. So when I'm speaking about spirit, and you're taking that breath and you're thinking about what I'm saying, a lot of you are probably saying, wow, that makes sense to me. I'm disconnected from spirit. I'm so angry. Because anger is a behavior. So we want to stay connected to Mother Earth and our teachings, because our ceremonies bring us right into spirit every time we do them. So does prayer, by the way. So does yoga, by the way. It doesn't really matter what you believe, as long as you do something to get you out of your head and into your belly. But we all have our own cultural ways of doing things. Indigenous children might get quite frightened if you try to do mindfulness with them. I do. I don't want to close my eyes and not be aware of what's happening in my environment, because there's a tremendous difference between mindfulness and spiritfulness, and I'm going to tell you what that is. Mindfulness is about being aware and just going into that peaceful place and just sort of making friends with that and letting that go. Spiritfulness, which we as Indigenous people do in ceremony, is about being aware of everything around us, going deep into that place. And when we do so, we ask ourselves, what do I need to do to take action to change my life? Spiritfulness has an action component to it. We don't walk away from spirit. We don't walk away from ceremony. When we come out of ceremony, we are already thinking, what do I need to do to help my mother? What do I need to do to help my community? What do I need to do myself to take action to make a difference in this world? So let's talk about residential school. What happened? Because residential school happened several hundred years ago originally, but you have to realize that the Indigenous people of Canada really weren't colonized by more than about twice by the same groups of people. And we were still able to maintain our culture, really, until around the early 1800s, when it really became common for us to be taken off to residential school, taken away from our families. Taking children away from their families isolates them from their culture, their language, their way of knowing. And children as young as 3 and 4 went to residential school. I don't know if people are aware of that. A lot of people think they were 5 or 6. Children as young as 3 and 4 were taken, especially the first waves of residential school. And those children were not allowed to return to their families till they were 15 years old. In many cases, they never saw their families again. And you all know that. You've heard that. What does that do to a child when you take them away from their families, their culture, the food that they eat, the songs that heal them, the language that heals them, the earth that heals them, and you tell them you are no longer who you are? See that man there? See that woman there? They'll tell you what to do, and you better listen to what they're having to say, because if you don't, you're going to get into trouble. So those little children were coming from their families where they knew how to be in spirit. Safety. You're not safe unless you're in spirit either. So please remember that when you're doing trauma-informed practice. Unless you're in spirit, you can change your environment all you want. Unless you now know how to create safety by getting people into spirit, trust, it's not a trauma-informed environment. So you take those little children and you take everything away from them, even their food. Now they have to eat food, they don't know what it is, they don't like the taste of it. You know what your children would be like, right? If all of a sudden they're given food and they don't know what it is and they go, oh, I don't want that. And they're told that they have to eat their food or they can't leave the table. And they don't get anything else until they eat their food. And we hear lots of stories about those things, and I'm not going to go into a lot of the stories because I want to really talk about what happens to those children as they grow up. So what we know about trauma, because those children became traumatized from the first moment that they were taken from their families, crying, mothers crying, fathers crying, and people were imprisoned for trying to hide their children. I knew of a story of a man that was imprisoned trying to hide his children, and his family didn't know where he was. They thought he had died in prison. So you hear stories like that, right? So take a breath, everybody. Let's come down into spirit, because I want you to hear the rest of this in your spirit, not in your head, because I'm going to be talking about the head. In residential school, children found older children that tried to protect them. And they would take those little ones and they would say, that's okay, follow me, do what I'm showing you. I'll try to help you. They still tried to smudge because our sage was growing wild in their school grounds. But they couldn't light it because they would be punished. So they would take that smudge and make sure nobody was watching, and they would roll it and they would pray, and it was called dry smudging, and you still see people do that today. So a lot of those older students would still dry smudge and pray, right? And as long as it wasn't lit, maybe they could get away with smudging every day. So the children tried very hard to stay together, to teach. Their primary concern was safety for those little ones and for each other. So what happens to children when you take them away from their families? They go into trauma, just like plants do, by the way. You know, we talked about smudge in the beginning and how we're all related. Remember that if you pull plants by the roots, they go into trauma too, right? And that's a whole other teaching. So here you have children taken from their roots, put into a school. They don't know what it is. They don't understand it. They don't understand the language. They're punished if they speak their language, all of those things. Some people were lucky enough to hold on to their language. That was a blessing. So what happens to those children when they go into fear? Because they did. What happens is when you go into fear, and by the way, everything in the world goes into fear when they're in danger, even the plants and the animals, and we know that, right? We have ways of protecting ourselves. Sometimes flowers will close up, right? I know that up north where I am, we have trees that turn their leaves when storms are coming. So everything on earth has the ability to feel fear and to know how to react to it with fight, flee, or freeze. That's what we did. And every single thing on earth reacts in the same way with fight, flee, and freeze. And fight, flee, and freeze is signaled right here, and that comes right up to the midbrain. Fight, flee, freeze. You know what the behaviors are? Anger, anxiety, and depression. And you might be thinking, wow, I have a lot of anxiety in my life. I have a lot of depression in my life. I have unprovoked anger in my life. What does that mean? It means you get angry for no reason, and you don't know why. You try very hard to stop it. But you see, something happened a long time ago to those children, and it may not have happened in this generation. But we have a science called epigenetics. And epigenetics is the science that shows us that for many generations, the memories and behaviors of our ancestors are passed down to us, not just the genetics, not just the color of our hair and the color of our eyes, but what's happened in the environment. If something repetitive happens over a period of time, that child's brain goes into trauma And they can't get out of their trauma brain. And if you can't get out of your trauma brain, you are going to live in fear for the rest of your life because you don't know that. It's so normal to you that when you walk in a door that you've never been walked through before, you're going to go into trauma, and immediately your brain's going to say, where do I hide? Who do I sit next to? Should I leave? How come he's looking at me like that? So everything in your environment you perceive as danger, and your brain can no longer shut off. So we should have the ability to fight when we need to fight if we're in danger, and then when we finish, we go, and we come back down into our spirit. Many of our people have a hard time getting into spirit because for such a prolonged period of time, their ancestors, or them perhaps, are living in an environment where they don't know what to expect. So they're in a perpetual state of fear in their brain. And we should not be in fear unless we're in danger. But what happens in residential school, those little children were in a perpetual state of fear. They couldn't turn the cortisol levels off. Even when they went to bed at night, they were always looking, right? And that toxicity, because it becomes toxic to us. Cortisol is a very good hormone if we can let it down every once in a while, right? We wake up and we get this cortisol. That's what cortisol is. It helps us get out of bed and move. And at several times in the day, we hope that you're able to relax and come down into a resting state. So if you're afraid of the word that I use, spirit, the parallel word to spirit is resting brain state. You have to be in order to be able to feel safe. Those little children did not feel safe. And they lived for many years in a perpetual state of fear. So everything was fight, flee, freeze. That's why we become bullies. That's not a normal thing, you know. We become bullies because we learn to fight our way out of fear. We run away from things and hide because we've learned to do that. Or we become very anxious and we can't really say anything. We don't want to leave our houses, all of those things. Those three behaviors are the primary behaviors that we carry if we have been traumatized or if our ancestors have been traumatized. Because we also know this from science. As Indigenous people, we didn't need to know this because we knew it anyway. Somebody should have asked us, is the world round? We could have told them that a long time ago. But what we know is that those behaviors are also passed down to us. So if you're living in an environment where there is no trauma, and yet you have this anger and you don't know where it comes from, you just think, I don't know where this anger comes from, but the slightest things happen and I just get so angry. Perhaps you may have had a grandparent in residential school that learned to fight to protect himself or herself. And she or he lived in that state of trauma for so long that it actually changed the gene. What it does is you get a blockage on top of your gene, and when the cell is looking for the right behavior, like kindness, it can't find it. So a lot of us have been altered because of our ancestors. So that is something that people don't understand sometimes. Sometimes people think, well, you didn't go to residential school, get over it. We can't. We can't until we realize that that's not normal. A lot of us think that's normal behavior because we've never seen any other kind of behavior. And it's passed down for 7 generations. So our ancestors have said to us, be careful what you do today because it will affect the next 7 generations. So when I'm telling you that being angry, being anxious, being sad are not normal behaviors if you're not in danger, a lot of you have never heard that before. And you have to hear that before you can change it, because you can't change what you aren't aware of. So now you're aware of that. Let's talk about the second thing that happens in residential school. You were told, don't cry, suck it up, get over it. Well, guess what? Our emotions are another piece of the whole being. Why do we have emotions if we're not supposed to use them? Our emotions are creators' antibiotics. We have to feel in order to heal. So in residential school, we were not given the opportunity to express our emotions. We were punished for that. We were told not to cry. We were told not to tell anyone. Just suck it up. So what happened essentially in residential school is that, excuse me, in colonization, all of us become 2-dimensional people, not 4-dimensional. We're all 4-dimensional beings. All human beings are spirit, emotion, physical, and cognitive beings. We're 4-dimensional beings. In colonization, we're pulled away from our spirit, so we don't know how to find hope. And we're told somebody's better than us. And we're pulled away from our emotions, so we can't heal. We can't acknowledge our emotions to heal. We're left with 2 things in a colonized world: physical and cognitive. What we look like and what we think is what becomes the most important things. The most important things for us as human beings is who we are, the values we carry, the emotions that heal us. The other 2 things shouldn't matter at all, because we are all created perfectly. Perfect. There aren't 2 of us that look exactly alike, even if we're twins. There are not 2 of us that are exactly the same. We are exactly who we are. We are perfect. But somebody has told us we are not. And therein comes all of the issues that have happened to us down through the generations. Because if your grandmother went to residential school and she learned a certain way to behave, she can only teach you the same way. And when she was told, don't speak your language, don't practice your culture, because our culture was outlawed for a long time, how can she pass those down to us? We have to reclaim it. So I don't like to use the word decolonize, because I don't think that's possible. Because I know that all of us, as 2-legged beings, no matter where we come from, are all coming from indigenous roots somewhere. So you need to realize, in this time in Canada, the people that remember the culture and the teachings I've just told you are the indigenous people. We have to embrace that. We have to be able to bring that back so that all of us can be safe, can remember who we are. Because the teachings that I teach about being an indigenous woman is also exactly the way my mother, who is English, believes. So residential school created people that are 2-dimensional rather than 4. And we have to repossess what we already know. Because if you know that the memories and behaviors are passed down to you as well, not just indigenous people, all human beings, then you have the ability to remember who you are too. You have the ability to embrace who you are. You have the ability to realize there is nothing wrong with you. Something happened to create the behaviors. And that is a very good place for all human beings to start. And we're going to do it with the indigenous people here because we still remember. And when we do ceremonies, we still remember. The songs come to us. So we remember songs. We don't know why we know them. I remember working with a young woman who cried, and she said, I remember a song. This song came to me, and I don't know how I know this song. And she began to sing this song. It came to her from an ancestor who passed down the good things as well. Not just the behaviors, their coping abilities. The behaviors we have are coping abilities. We learn to cope as children. How can we fault children to learn to fight? To learn to run away and hide? Children aren't bad. We're not bad. But residential school taught us that there's something wrong with us. There is nothing wrong with us. We have the ability to heal from this, but only if we're aware of what happened. And I think that that's very important. We have to be aware of what happened. We have to be aware that we have to acknowledge our emotions. So if I'm angry, I have to say, thank you. I have a right to be angry because we do. It's your anger. Where did it come from? Something happened to make you angry. You're not angry at someone else necessarily. You're angry because you don't have control somewhere in our history. Those three things are about not being in control. And we have to take it back. And the only way we can take control back is to be in our spirit. So everybody take a breath. Come down into your belly button. You might find it hard to get there. Because if you've been carrying those behaviors for a while, they get stuck in our body, in our physical body too. So when you look at a child, for example, who's really upset, they breathe like this. That's not spirit. You're only in your spirit when you can get your breath right down to your belly button. Then you're going to drop into that prefrontal cortex. You're going to get out of that survivor brain. And all of a sudden, you're going to say, wow, I know what I need to do. You know, I often think, why is it we start with the cognitive? Because Indigenous people don't start with the cognitive. We don't say, now tell me how you cope with this. I don't cope in a good way. I can't even think. I don't know who you are. Where am I? How do I get out of this building? Are you going to tell anybody what I said? We don't start from the cognitive. We start from the spirit. And maybe in the next 2 days, we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. So take that breath. And remember that you might find riding horses helps get you there. You might find walking with your dog helps you get there. You might find singing helps you get there. You might find art helps you get there. We all have the ability to do something to get us into spirit. We don't have to pray. Prayer gets us there too. Just remember that we all have spirit. We all have the ability to get there. And when you're in your spirit, the behaviors will go away. You'll be in control, and you'll be able to live your life with kindness and love and respect and honesty and accountability and responsibility no matter where you go. Those things that you see around you won't bother you. You'll go, you know, let me just offer you my support, my kindness, my love. You won't have to get angry if somebody looks at you in a funny way. Because those children also take the cues from how you stand and how you look. Those little wee children, if they saw somebody walk by like this, to them that's danger. This is safety. So if you're trying to engage somebody, it's not going to work if you say, now tell me what your name is and where you're from. I can't remember. So if you say, hi, we don't even know we give our power away either. A lot of people that are working in support don't realize that we have a power over people that we don't know we do have. So people are afraid of us as soon as they see us. We have the ability to come down into our spirit. And believe you me, people who are in trauma know if you're real or not. So it doesn't work if you pretend to be in spirit. And so if you have something that's blocking that spirit, you need to go, and you keep doing that. And all of a sudden, you'll just drop into your belly button, because anger is like a fist. And you know where we carry it? Right here. That's why children get sick to the stomach, right? Anxiety is like a fist, and guess where we carry it? Right under our heart. Depression is in our heart. Get through those behaviors into your spirit. Nobody's spirit is different. And understand that Indigenous people need to work with their culture. They need to come back into spirit, and we feel safe when we're doing culture. We feel safe when we hear those sounds around us. We vibrate at the same level of the place we were born. Did you know that? That's why it's so hard for us to leave where we're born, and we feel this grief, right? That's why we're told to call your spirit with you, because they don't want to leave. And we call our spirit with us. I'm here now. Let's get used to this earth. And after a while, it gets easier for us to get used to that earth, right? So I thank you today. I'm not sure if I have any more time. I have no idea what time it is. And perhaps there are some questions, or I don't know what other part you wanted to do.
Yes, we have time for some questions. So we'll take maybe 10 minutes of questions. If you're online joining us, as most of you are, feel free to add any questions in the chat function. I have a colleague here monitoring, so please feel free to ask questions. Anyone here in Circle, if we have questions around stuff, feel free to jump in and chime in. In 10 minutes or so, we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back after the break and continue with our conversation. But if there's any questions right now that people have, feel free to ask. The floor is open.
What are some ways that we as adults can support the youth and young kids in our life in coming into spirit and connecting to themselves in that way?
Well, if you're working with Indigenous kids, and this is what I tell people often, is you have to be able to bring culture to kids, because a lot of our children have never been exposed to culture at all. So I had somebody in a group home, not from here, in another place where I was visiting, and he said to me, you know what, we brought smudge into our group home. It's sitting right there. They can smudge all they want, but they don't want to. And I looked at him and I said, yes, they do. They just don't know how to smudge. And they don't want to look ashamed in front of other people. And I said, it is not up to you to teach smudge. In fact, I would tell you that if you are not Indigenous, you should not be teaching cultural protocol. It is not okay. You bring in an elder into your environment and start those families off and those children with the teachings of smudge and praying with them. Because lots has happened since residential school to our people that got lost to the street and have come back now. And a lot of children don't want to let anybody know where they're coming from. They have a lot of shame. And so we have to show them that this is what the culture is. And so bring an elder to them. Bring them to your organizations where you have elders. Bring them to powwows. everybody that has a group home, everybody that is a foster parent should be, and that has Indigenous children, should be bringing elders into that environment to work with those children. I would not expect the foster parents to do that unless they are Indigenous and have been given the right to do it. So just because you're Indigenous does not mean you have the right to do certain things either. So be very careful that you ask, who has the right to put a teepee up, right? Who has the right to teach the story of smudge? Who has the right to teach you how to build a drum? All of those things are important. And one of the best things you can do for children who are really not connected is to smudge and drum. Because every single culture in the world has drums. Why? Because our ancestors from 1,000 years ago or more knew that that drum creates a vibration, and that vibration vibrates the entire earth around us, the animals around us, and it vibrates our body. And if you're carrying anger, that drumming helps to bring it right out of you. So you need to approach children from the perspective that they don't know anything, and bring somebody in that they can respect. Because the one thing that we do know is that people that have more culture are more resilient. And it's because they have pride. You can't just teach culture without giving them pride. So very good question. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Yes.
As far as the residential school system, and this is kind of like a current events issue, I guess. I know a lot of people are starting to learn about it now.
Can you take your mask off for a minute?
Yeah,
I can't
sorry,
hear you.
Yeah.
You're 6 feet apart, so.
Yeah, we should be fine. I know that, should I take the mic or no? Because I don't know about the.
That's fair.
Okay. I know a lot of people are still learning about this residential school system, and even like from a factual standpoint they can learn, but they don't really empathize with the actual trauma that's really been in place. And so I'm just wondering how we as a community can help people really empathize and fully understand the impact that we're still seeing of the residential school system in our country.
Well, first of all, it needs to be taught everywhere. When you reach the children at a community level and everybody learns the same story rather than the fake news, and I don't mind using that, you really need to know what happened, because we know that history is not written by the people that lose. It's always written by the victors, and they're going to write their side to the story, right? So we really need to be able to teach all about what happened, the real story, right from those little babies. And we can't teach it the way I've taught you just now, because that would frighten them. And I don't want Indigenous children to come out and say, I hate people, right? I want children to come out and learn and feel the story. So we tell stories to children that actually teach them about residential school and what happens, if you do certain things and how you work together. And so those stories are about reconciliation and healing and how you work together. And then gradually, as they get a little bit older, we can offer a little bit more, but we don't want to offer any children, whether they are Indigenous or non, this, because they would be terrified of this and feel ashamed. We don't want to shame people. We want people to learn about what happens when you're taken away and why we are trying to get that back in a way that isn't going to terrify them. So we start in schools. We have to start in the schools. And we start in places like Child and Family Services so that they all know that story, right? And everybody that is connected to those foster homes and group homes, they need to have the stories taught in the right way. They need to understand, have the awareness that something happened, there's not something wrong with this. Because you will have so many kids growing up thinking there's something wrong with them because someone told them that. There's nothing wrong with us, right? So it's just very, very important that we teach it to as many people that will listen. Everybody. So, Zoom, one of the great things about Zoom is that you can record me, and you can record other elders, and you can play it wherever you would, through whatever platform you need to play it, to the school children, to other people out there. I know people that have listened to the Zooms that I've done that were coming from Montana. And one came from Los Angeles, and she said, I was looking for all about the teachings about sage, and this popped up in Calgary. So we are able to connect, and we have to connect. If we do this individually and teach people one person one thing and other people other things, we are still going to maintain this huge disconnect. So we have to teach everybody in every venue we possibly can, including our own children and our own people. I tell this story to everybody because a lot of our own people don't know this. So it's important we teach the same story to everyone. So thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. I have a question here from online. Thank you. The question is, please share if there are any more ways to get in spirit more deeply to our own and others. Thank you for mentioning prayer, breathing, and song.
And that's a good question too, because some people get confused about spirit and what that is. Spirit, if you know that spirit is in the center of your body, and you have to be in that relaxed state to get there, almost anything that you do, which gets you into what I call the zone, where you're not afraid, you're just in that really relaxed state, and nothing bothers you at all. You can do anything. You can walk, you can do yoga, you can do mindfulness, you can go swimming, which is something that I canoe, I kayak. Those are the things that I do that bring me right into my spirit. There's nothing more peaceful to me than that. You can sit and have coffee if that's what you like, in a very quiet, beautiful place, and just come into that place, right? So anything that you can do where you are in that place, that zone, where you feel totally at peace, is in spirit. So almost anything.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Right now, there's some comments I'm going to come in, but I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to take a 10-minute break for those online, so giving you time to get your coffee and get in spirit. As we go into our next session, thank you all. We're going to take 10 minutes, and we'll come back. Thanks so much. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had some time to go do a little bio break, get something to eat, think of some great questions to pose for Elder Carey. So welcoming back into our circle, great first part of the session. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom and just rechecking a lot of stuff that we know but often forget, like you said earlier. Thank you so much for doing that. I have a question here from online, from Valerie. Valerie's question is, Carey, this is exhausting work for Indigenous people. It's 24/7 teaching. Can you share some thoughts on self-care for ourselves?
Yeah, that's a big one, because when you are a helper in your community, everybody is going to look for you at all hours of the day and the night, and it's exhausting. And we don't leave because we want to be able to help our communities particularly, but we tend to take care of ourselves last, and we really have to take care of ourselves every day and make time for it. So I usually give these 3 things to people. I always say, at the end of the day, you need to look at if you've completed what you need to do for Creator. One is, what have I done for my family today? What have I done for the universe today? And what have I done for myself today? And you really have to take that time for yourself to get rid of that cortisol. Otherwise, you're going to end up with trauma yourself. And I do see that a lot. And the sad thing for me is that a lot of really amazing teachers and helpers out there burn out because they just can't deal with it anymore. And when you're feeling that you can't deal with it anymore, it's probably because you're just burnt out. You need to take that rest, and you need to give yourself that time to do that. And I do. I have my own way of doing things and taking time for myself. One of the things that I do is I really believe in transitions. So when you're coming from work, you want to have a transition before you step into the next role. And that's really hard. Sometimes driving your vehicle helps, right? I actually like driving when it's not snowing, listening to music. There's something about it that just kind of puts me into that zone. I think it's the vibration of the car as well. So by the time I get home, I've had that time for my cortisol to come down, because what we're actually doing is we're trying to get the cortisol down. So whatever we can do to take time for ourselves to make sure the cortisol is coming down several times a day, and then you can jump back into it, right? But we do have to take holidays, and we do have to take time for ourselves every day, or we will get sick. So, yeah.
So true, so true. Just as, a longstanding social worker in our field, I mean, it's the stuff that we often hear about in dealing with a lot of the supports and giving of people every single day. I mean, the importance of that self-check-in and that space and time several times a day. I think often, I know I'm guilty of it, only doing it near the end of the day or just on the weekend and getting, on a motorcycle and going and doing that for the weekend. But it is that good reminder to have that several times through the day to ensure that we are that self-regulation in terms of that ability for us just to be in our spirit and our best every single day. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. Have some fantastic comments coming in from everyone watching. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to share some with you, if you don't mind, some of our viewers. Comments coming in saying, beautiful teachings. I didn't even realize how much I needed this. Thank you. So thank you so much for sharing that. We have someone joining us from California. So as a Native American in California, I am currently a social work major. I would like to talk with you, Elder Carey, regarding tonight. I will be emailing you. Would like to write a paper on tonight as well to follow up on that. So their sharings are helping others in California. And so that just speaks to, again, that whole interconnectedness that we have in the accessibility of technology nowadays versus being in person. So thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Appreciate that. In terms of some other questions, we have one here from Tim Fox, our friend Tim. He's listening to us, so hi, Tim. And Tim's question is, wondering, Carey, what your perspective is on the responsibility of all Canadians to know the significance of Orange Shirt Day.
Well, it's about reconciliation. We have to, it's the awareness, right? What is Orange Shirt Day? What is the significance of that, right? You will all be hearing the story of Orange Shirt Day, and the fact that it really is about having things taken away from you and never seeing them again. That's essentially what when the orange shirt was taken away from the one person that had gone, whose story that we use, and I can't recall her name now. But it's important that people realize that this isn't just something that happened in the past. We are still passing down all of that discrimination, all of that intolerance, and it only ends when we teach everybody, like I was talking before to you about the fact that everybody needs to know what residential school did, what reconciliation is. We all have to learn it together. That is why we have Orange Shirt Day, and I'm really grateful for that, because never in my day did we ever hear about residential school. Even going to school, it wasn't ever taught. We just had to sort of hide it, and now we don't. Now we can talk about it, and this is the beginning. It certainly isn't the end. It's just a beginning to make people aware of what happened in a way that might not frighten people so much, but be aware of what happened. And that reconciliation is really about taking that back now. So we never have to lose our culture, our gifts, our families, all of those things. This is the beginning to me of reconciliation. All of the things that we are doing are just the beginning of reconciliation. It's important for people to be aware of it so that it never happens again.
Completely agree 100%. You know, when we look at Orange Shirt Day, I mean, that's what this whole series is about. Phyllis Webstad is the lady from Williams Lake that started Orange Shirt Day. And as we lead into Wednesday, of course, we'll be having, you know, more conversation about what Orange Shirt Day is. And Wednesday, we also have Jackson this year is the designer for this year's Orange Shirt. He'll be coming to join us in session on Wednesday to talk about his design as a young gentleman, Indigenous gentleman who designed it. So it's that piece of, often I think, you know, conversations, I think the hard part in working the work that we do in our community, it's while this information is new, it's also trying to balance out how do we have those conversations in a meaningful way as a community without it coming to be about blame or shame. It's about taking ownership of our shared history. And again, looking at that rewriting, and it can be hard. Conversations like this often don't start out, you know, as easy as some other conversations do around the dinner table. But the importance of having these conversations is about creating that awareness. Without doing that, we're also helping bury that truth. And so, you know, today, you know, I'm just so grateful for what you've shared today in terms of your knowledge and recentering. It can often be hard sometimes for us to remember to reground ourselves in this work, because it does become very onerous and very entrenching and hurting on the soul when we have to talk about this a lot. But it's important work that we need to do. By far, this is the stuff that we need to have conversations about, continue to have conversations about, and not shy away from it as a community. So thank you so much for doing that and speaking. Questions?
This is perfect timing too, because I wanted to talk about or ask this question in relation to conversations and having these types of conversations. I know with a lot of non-Indigenous people that I've personally spoken to, and people probably have had similar experiences, where when these types of conversations come up, they feel like they're starting to get blamed for the past of the churches and the government, and they start getting that anger or resentment towards Indigenous people. And I'm just wondering how we can navigate these types of conversations in a way that really brings people to an understanding, and again, this kind of relates to what I was talking about earlier, but really helps them empathize in a way that doesn't make them feel blamed, but helps them understand, so we can help de-radicalize, for instance, Because like when I think about today, I think about things we were seeing like with the Micmac fishermen, and we see a lot of this online hate and this lot of misunderstanding, it seems, from the non-Indigenous people of what's actually happening. And so I'm just wondering how we can navigate these types of conversations in a way that is actually productive and not just ends up in a screaming match.
Well, I think if you have the awareness of what's happening, right, and what's happened, and you take an active role in trying to learn everything you can, and if you take an active role in yourself and really looking at those emotions that you're feeling because you have a right to them as well, then we can actually stop this from happening. So having blame and shame and all of those pieces are all part of our emotions that we're supposed to face. So when we face that shame and say, where's that coming from? Where's that grief coming from? We can help it go away. But we can't help it go away unless we have those conversations. And we take responsibility for our own emotions. We can't take responsibilities for what's happened in the past. We can only take responsibility for knowing what happened, knowing that our ancestors may have been a part of that. Maybe some of those emotions that we're carrying is passed down to us as well, and we need to end that. We need to work together so that we can let go of that blame and shame, because we can let go of those emotions if we accept them, if we acknowledge them, but we can't let go of them if we hold on to them and don't talk about them. So it's quite normal to feel that way. It's just Creator's antibiotic saying, take this, deal with it, so that you don't it'll go away and you won't have to deal with this again because you're not going to do it again. It really is about if we know what's happened and we make a conscious effort to change it, then hopefully it's not going to happen again. Reconciliation is about, let's change this so it doesn't happen again. And we are going to feel the emotions. But if people know that our emotions are Creator's antibiotics, maybe we're healing our ancestors' pain as well, right? Because we get their pain passed down to us. We can't imagine that everybody knew about residential school, even back 200 years ago, right? So a lot of those things we didn't know about, a lot of the people out there, right? But now we know it, and now we're not going to let it happen again.
I really appreciate what you said about owning our emotions, because that's all we have control over. And often when I talk with folks about our shared history and current issues that we see in Indigenous communities, that's the stance that I take, is we're obligated to educate ourselves and whatever that might look like, and we're only responsible for our emotions. So I think about, if we're engaging in these really difficult conversations, are we equipped to do it? And I think that that's such an important message when we start to really unpack the residential school system and how it affects us today. Because when we look at, if we are personally not ready to talk about it openly in a group without becoming angry or frustrated or feeling all of these emotions that come with trauma, or on the other side, all the emotions that come with, I guess, colonization as a whole, and this maybe feeling of guilt or whatever the case might be, or denial or those sorts of things, we really have to look at, is it worth that conversation at that time? And if it's going to result in anger, does your spirit need that? Right? And so when you said that about our accountability, it resonated with me so deeply, because it's always how I try to approach these topics, in a gentle, and mindful way, because I'm on my own healing journey in different areas, but I also want to honor that that other person may not be there. So if I can teach in a gentle way, you get more flies with honey, right? So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciated that.
Thank you. So true. So true. We're not ready to talk about it either. Yeah. And it's the same thing, right? I don't go after things that aren't ready to come out. The whole idea of people saying, I need to talk about this. If people are ready to talk about it, they can talk about it. But some people aren't, and we should not be going after it. We take care of those things sometimes within ourselves in other ways, like through ceremony, right? And through singing. I've seen people singing with the tears rolling down their cheeks, and something profound happens to them in that moment, right? So we can heal our pain, not just with therapy. We heal our pain with ceremony. That's how we've always done it. And so when we're ready for it, it will come out and we will be able to heal it. But if you pick at it, you cause more harm than good. And you're right. People aren't ready to hear it. They'll say, I don't believe that. It's okay. I don't take that. I do not get angry at that. I go, well, at least he had a reaction. And when people have a reaction, it means that they've been touched by it. Yeah. So we just have to be honest and kind in the telling, and people will come to it when they are ready. But sharing it on the levels that we do is very important, because the more you share it with, the more reactions you get, and each time they hear it, that reaction might change.
And there will be a point where denying fact is no longer possible.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's, again, what's so important, and why we chose to do not just 1 hour over a lunch break with Orange Shirt Day, but really to give the survivors and the people who have passed on as a result of residential school the space that they deserve to have these conversations, so that hopefully we can shift that thought process a little bit, if only just an inch. It's better than where we were before we started.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have another question from online. How can we navigate uncomfortability conversations currently in the U.S. versus them space? For example, Indigenous versus Catholic, Canadian government / Caucasian towards unity and full reconciliation.
Wow, do we have 4 days to answer that?
I know, that's a loaded question. Good one, yes.
I just think that, we have to realize that we're all in this together. And there are always challenges for all of us. We're human beings. And challenges are supposed to help us cope and become resilient and learn how to do better at something. Reality is that. There will be people, as Jessica was saying, that are ready for that now. There will be people that will not be ready for it, maybe not ever ready for it in my lifetime or in their lifetimes. And that's not my role. My role is, let's be honest about this. Let's talk about what's happened, the reality of what's actually happened. Let's talk about reconciliation and what that looks like. Let's talk about how we're all in this together. Let's talk about the fact that we can't separate those things into little silos, because there are so many issues, right? How do we talk about gender? How do we talk about this? How do we talk about that? The reality is that it comes right back to the smudge. When you come back to the smudge and you know that we were all created equal, we're all created with all of the values in us. What happened to us? And if you look at it from that perspective, you realize, boy, this whole world has had a lot of trauma, right? So I often, when I speak that way to people who are like this to me, and I talk about that, and talk about that behaviors aren't normal. We're only supposed to have behaviors when we're in danger. It shows you that people have never healed that trauma, that it's coming from wherever they're coming from too. And so that's why we have the opportunity as Indigenous people in Canada to start that healing process for people that never would have done that otherwise, because there is a commitment to indigenizing strategies. It didn't happen in the United States, it happened here. So we have the opportunity to have people really look at this from wherever they're coming from, whatever their views are, and realize that, boy, we're really not that different. And everybody has a right to who they are, remember that. It's when it interferes with someone that we have to step in. And it's too bad that it takes something awful to happen before we have people collectively doing that. And I hate to say that, but you know what? COVID did that to us. If you think about what did COVID give us, right? Well, people will go, are you kidding me? No. What did COVID do? It created this isolation for people to go within themselves. Now, Creator does this purposely. Creator, in our ceremonies, we are sent out to sit by ourselves for 4 days or longer, and we go into our teepees, we go into our sweat lodges where we are supposed to face ourselves. We're supposed to go within ourselves and look at who we are, and then take action to change. And so COVID did that to us. And some people are coming out of that saying, this has got to change. And some people are feeling sorry for themselves. They're at that point where their depression is getting to them. And that's okay. I mean, depression's not okay, but you are where you are. And we do not live in a world where everybody sees the world in exactly the same way. It helps all of us think. We just need to be safe. I think that's the thing. We need to be safe going through all of these changes and this intolerance. And so people who are coming through that COVID isolation are getting angry, right? Because what's happened to them? Fight, flee, freeze, right? They're now in that isolation and they come out angry. How dare this happen, right? That's a good thing sometimes. That's when you use anger to its advantage. That's when you use that fear to its advantage. But all we can do is we can create the awareness for everyone in this world. What happened to Indigenous people? And in the process, people will see what happened to them too. And that's all we can do, in the hopes that more and more people are going to come out of COVID being kinder and gentler. We hope.
And how impactful is it to think about other people in that way? We often look at how we are divided, our differences, but at the root, we're far more alike than we are different. And I know it's kind of a messed up way to think about it in our trauma, that we all come from trauma, we're all colonized, but doesn't that create space for these learnings to occur and find those relations,
Yes.
regardless of where you come from in the world? Because when we can find that commonality, that common ground, it really shifts the way that we can work together, that we can look at reconciliation from a different lens, because then it's not so far-fetched to be like, well, I need to read that entire TRC document to understand, or I need to, I need to watch this movie, or I need to go on this learning journey, or I have to sit with elder for how long, right? The shifting goes from I have to do what to I need to do this because it's my healing too. And that's such an impactful thing, and something I'm going to take away from tonight is that when we look at that person across from us, regardless of what they're coming at us with, good, bad, ugly, they're in their own trauma in some form, and that's how we relate. In a weird, backwards way, that's also where we can find our healing.
Right.
And so many elders talk about that too. Elders who met each other young, just coming out of residential school, healing together. And talking openly about their trauma and how they had to shift their thinking to care for one another, to then care for their family. And like, if we just took a step back away from the anger first to that inner child that everybody has that's harmed, would really shift, I think, the way that we look at how we manage our current issues that we see.
Yeah, and I think when you look at emotions, when you see that anger, anxiety, and depression, what do you see? You see a little child.
Yeah.
Because is that normal adult behavior? No. So we're all little children that have been traumatized at some point in our lives. And that's why I like to talk about the fact that we've all been colonized. I don't take that away from Indigenous people. But if people recognize that their anger, their depression, their anxiety may be rooted in their own trauma from many generations back, then they can look at it and go, I never thought of it that way. And we start to see the connection then, rather than the disconnection, right? Yeah, and we can heal together. Yeah.
I got, I guess, another question. It kind of ties into what you were just talking about there, Jessica. When it comes to reconciliation, both non-Indigenous and Indigenous, how could we be more of an actor and a supporter rather than just a spectator in that process?
We are always taking action. Part of being Indigenous people, one of the things that we learn in our ceremony is you don't just sit back, you look at what you can do to be of service to the universe. So it is about talking, it is about teaching, it is about doing ceremony and inviting other people to that ceremony. It is about having those conversations. We can't just walk away from it because we need to create those connections, and we need to do that healing together. So we do have to take an active role. It's difficult, though, to take an active role ourselves, especially if we're coming from trauma, because one of the things that happens in residential school is people tell us don't do anything unless somebody tells you. And so I see in many cases that people are waiting for people to bring them together. And so I'm leaving that out there because nothing changes in the world unless we take action to change it. And that means actively engaging with the people around us, ourselves as well. That's another thing. Coming from residential school really has kind of put us in that position of, what do I do? Tell me what to do. Because they don't know what to do. And when you're in your spirit, you know what you need to do. And that's the important thing, right? So, yeah, we have to take action to change our lives. We can't expect people to do that for us, right? Yeah.
So I think we have time for just one more question. Do we have any more on our online comments?
Sure. Got one more question coming in.
You know, a lot of the things that we're talking about today, we'll probably talk over the next 2 days as well, because we'll be talking about reconciliation and alliedship, all of those things, right? So, and you'll have an opportunity to speak to Reg and Rose as well and have other teachings, right? Yeah, yeah.
And lots of space for more questions to come in. So folks who are watching us virtually, please put your questions in the chat, comment, all of that, because we will read it and we will pass that information along.
I have a question and a comment here added into one, and it's going to be quite lengthy just to give enough aspects here. So please bear with me, and thank you so much for sharing your story and part of this question. The comment says, the anger my father had wasn't very good. My father was a residential survivor, but he would take his anger all out on me. But all I ask is, how can I impact my father to stray from his now path to help him go back the path he deserves to walk on? I don't want him to suffer and remember the abuse or the other things that happened to him. I also want the abuse for what has happened for me to stop.
That's a very big question because that's what a lot of people are dealing with. So when I talked about epigenetics earlier, about how not just the genetics are passed down to us, but so are the behaviors. And so we know that nature and nurture play an equal role in how our brain develops. And so if your father grew up in an environment where there was a lot of addictions and a lot of anger, and that's all he knew, he may, not always, but he may raise his children in exactly the way he was taught. He doesn't mean to do that. That's all he knows, though. And so part of the healing is being aware of why he's like that, because his father probably doesn't know what he knows, which is that that anger's been passed down to him from somewhere in his history, and he's never learned anything else. In his brain is telling him that's exactly how you react. So he's not doing it to be mean. He's doing it because that's all he knows. That's how he's learned to teach. And now this young person is saying, how do I deal with that? And he needs to just love his father and know that his father loves him, but you can only teach what you know. Your brain only knows what your brain knows unless you teach it something new. So what does he have to do? He has to teach his dad something new. Teach his dad about the fact that something happened to create that anger. That anger is a natural response to danger, but he's not in danger. He needs to know that he's not a bad person. He learned that behavior. And he has to have that discussion with his father because his father doesn't know anything else. Can his father change? Yes. But the longer we stay in trauma, the harder it is and the longer it takes for us to heal it. But trauma is treatable. So I think that's important to note. And maybe his father will reach out to him for something and maybe they can do things together so his father can begin to heal what hurt him as well, that he's carrying deep within him. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and hopefully that was helpful. Which also leads, I think, into tomorrow's session when we talk about resiliency and what does that look like. I think hopefully for many of you that are tuning in right now that you're going to be joining us tomorrow evening as well, because that's the topic we will be delving a little bit further deeper down into, is around resiliency. What does that mean from an Indigenous worldview? So hopefully we can have a bit more deeper conversation on that. We have come to our time in the evening where we have to say goodbye for now. So first and foremost, I'd like to just thank Elder Carey for being here this evening and for sharing the information that you have and the wisdom that you have. I know it's not an easy topic of conversation, but one, again, that's very much needed, obviously, in terms of as we lead up to Orange Shirt Day. Want to thank the entire crew here that helped make the evening possible, so the entire team here at Trellis, as well as our sponsors, TC Energy, FMAV, as well as 7 Generations Energy, for being here. Make sure you tune in tomorrow if you have not logged in already. We will be sending another link to access the YouTube channel. It will be a new link, so if you haven't registered for yet tomorrow, please do so on our Eventbrite. We just want to say, again, just thank you very much for your words.
Thank you.
The time and the gift that you share with us means a lot. It is, again, spurring the conversation with each of us, and now that we have the knowledge to take this information forward, it's our responsibility and ownership to figure out a way for us to share that with those that we share space with. And so thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. And thank you, everyone, for sitting in circle. And have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Miigwech, everyone.